All right, I do have 7 o'clock now. So if CNET's all ready, we will go ahead and call the meeting to order. So I will call to order the regular meeting of the Ferguson Township Board of Supervisors for Tuesday, March 15th, 2022. I'll turn this right over to Interim Township Manager Centrise Martin, and she'll let us all know how we can participate in this hybrid meeting this evening. Centrise, thank you. And you're muted. Take your time.
Sorry. All right. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And your audio doesn't seem to be working right now.
Okay.
At least for me.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Mm-hmm. Can you hear me now?
I can't hear Centrise. Maybe
yes,
it's my computer, huh? All right. You all can hear me and I cannot hear you. All right.
Sorry.
How is that?
I can hear you.
I can hear you.
Okay. Fantastic. All right. All right. So shall I proceed, Madam Chair? Okay. Thank you. And thank you to the members of the board, staff, and the public for joining us this evening for the March 15th regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors. This meeting has been properly advertised in accordance with the Pennsylvania Sunshine Act as a virtual meeting conducted using the Zoom telemeeting platform. Additionally, the main meeting room has been made available for members of the public to attend in person. If you are joining the Zoom meeting tonight as a member of the public or as an agent to speak on behalf of an agenda item, please state your name, the municipality of residence, and if applicable, the topic to which you desire to speak about. Prior to commencing the meeting, I have a few short procedural items to cover. First, members of the public are asked to remain muted during the meeting to prevent any ambient noise from disrupting the meeting. If a member of the public is acknowledged by the chair, they may unmute their microphone for their question or comment. Secondly, board members are asked to indicate their name when motioning or seconding a motion so that the minutes may accurately reflect the action taken. Finally, a roll call of the Board of Supervisors will now be taken to ensure that all members can hear and interact using the Zoom meeting platform. Please indicate that you are here when your name is called. Ms. Caldwell? Here. Ms. Dineni? Ms. Dineni? I'm unable to hear you.
Laura, this is Rhonda. I'm wondering if you should restart your computer.
It appears that Ms. Dineni is messaging.
You could leave the meeting and try to re-enter and see if that works first and then restart your computer if it doesn't. Yeah, and we can handle it here until you get back in.
Okay, so I'll continue the roll call. Ms. Stevens?
Here.
Ms. Strickland?
Here.
Ms. Williams?
Present.
Okay, thank you. Madam Chair or Supervisor Strickland, who I'm not sure who might continue the meeting, but you have a quorum. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Centrise. We'll let Laura get back in here and just move ahead with citizens' input for any items not on the agenda. Centrise, did you know of anything?
Citizen input, not at this time. I don't have anything.
And then if you want to give your instructions for the Zoom meeting if you have not done that yet?
I did complete that already.
Okay, so we can move on to approval of the minutes, and we have two sets of minutes, February 8th Board of Supervisors work session and March 1st Board of Supervisor regular meeting minutes. We can take a motion to approve both of those unless there's any changes that need to be worked in ahead of time.
This is Patty. I move that we approve the February 8th Board of Supervisor work session and the March 1st Board of Supervisor regular meeting minutes.
This is Hillary. I second.
Okay, thanks. Any discussion, any changes on those? If not, all those in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Okay, and those minutes are all approved. And we can move on to authorities, boards, and commissions report. And first up, we have the UAJA report with Mr. Mark Kunkel.
Good evening, board members and members of the public. I've provided a copy of the UAJA status report through February of 2022 for your information, and I don't have anything additional to add to that, although there may be a discussion surrounding the Meeks Lane Act 537 plan special study that board members may want to engage in.
Thanks very much, Mark, and thanks for that report, and thanks for serving on that board. It's very much appreciated, and I'm the other current representative to UAJA, so I've attended a couple of meetings so far. It's been very interesting, and I'm enjoying getting to learn more about it. Since I serve on the Lucy committee also, it's a good crossover there since we work with a lot of those issues as well there. And that is the one that Mark was referring to is the Meeks Road pump station. I'll bring up my notes here on that. Really, all I wanted to do is give a really quick overview of what the, not even so much that, just to kind of touch base with everyone. You could have all seen in the report and in the Lucy meeting agendas that have been coming across what that special study is about. Currently, there are two different plans for that study. One is from the UAJA, and that includes an extension of service provision, the possibility of service provision to about 600 EDUs or dwellings in the Half Moon Township area. Center Region Planning Agency is proposing an alternate study that does not include those residential units because Half Moon Township has not approved expanding the sewer service area into their township. So from the perspective of CRPA, it's a bit of an overreach from the UAJA's authority to include those Half Moon Township EDUs in that study. So that's where the difference in perspective is coming from. I thought Mark characterized the UAJ's perspective really well in the report, so you can go back and read that. What's going to happen next is this study will come back to the Lucy Committee in April. We will take any feedback that you all want to give me here now or via email or whatever before that meeting. We'll bring that back to the Lucy Committee and discuss, and it'll be sent to the general forum for the general forum to refer this study back to the municipality. So we will discuss this before it moves forward again. But the Lucy Committee had asked that if there is any feedback, any questions, concerns at this point, or any opinions or preferences about which plan is favored from the municipalities, to provide that feedback to the Lucy representatives. That would be me to bring back to that April meeting. So, if there is anything now, if you have any questions or comments, I'm happy to take that now. If you'd like to provide that later before that April meeting, that's fine. So I thought this was a good opportunity to present that. I know the committee wanted some municipal feedback. So, if you have some, I'm open to that. And if you'd like to get back to me later on that, that's absolutely all right as well. And like I said, it'll be coming back to us as a full agenda item, likely in May would be the earliest.
Supervisor Strickland, if I could just intervene just for a minute so we could do a sound test with Madam Chair. If you would like to speak, Madam Chair.
Thanks. Let's give it a try.
We can hear you.
I heard you.
Yes.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you both.
Okay, so it's a little odd because I'm on my phone and that's where I'm getting my audio, but you're seeing me on the computer. So I don't know if there'll be a delay or not, but I'm glad it's working. Thank you, Lisa. I was glad we talked about this earlier so I could multitask better. And I thank you for that addition to Mr. Kunkel's report. And thank you, Mark, for that report. Are you looking for feedback right now, Lisa?
If there is any, that's absolutely fine. If not, I can take it at a later point. I think the Lucy committee was really just looking to see if there were any preferences at this point about which plan to move forward. I come from the planning perspective, so I'm, definitely leaning toward that CRPA approved plan, that study plan, which does not include the Half Moon units. Half Moon Township has said they didn't want that included. And so I do understand the UAJA perspective, absolutely, but that's where I'm coming from, and we'll have further discussion. But if there's a real preference for the UAJA plan, I guess I'd like to hear that, since that's that would be a bit different from my own perspective.
Thanks, Lisa. I guess I'll chime in that I do not have a strong preference or even any preference for the UAJA plan at this time. If they wanted to provide more evidence of why that's the wise choice, I'd certainly hear that. And I appreciate Lucy working on this and offering this other perspective. We always want to plan for future growth, but not if people don't want to grow there. So there's a tension there. So those are my thoughts. Does anyone else have anything they wanted to offer on that matter?
Madam Chairman, all I would say is that I think you could liken this to constructing a road with a HOV lane and not using the HOV lane until it's actually needed. And so I think that's where UAJA came from, is a perspective of doing the project at the least expensive cost at this point in time, maybe not utilizing that capacity until such time as the region decided to expand its sewer service area and not have to incur future additional cost, excessive future additional cost, since the project is going to be under construction, at this point in time.
Thanks, Mark, very much. And thank you much for your service. Any other questions for Mark before we move on from this item? All right, seeing none, thank you again. We will now move on to special reports. First up, Interim Manager Centrise Martin with our COVID-19 local response report.
Thank you. So there have been no operational changes in the township since the last update. As a reminder, the Center for Disease Control issued an interaction tool for a COVID-19 county check to determine the prevention steps a community should follow based on their community level. Levels can be categorized as low, medium, or high, and are determined based on local data. I'm happy to share that as of today, March 15th, Center County COVID-19 community level is reported as being low, which means the Center for Disease Control recommends that people should get tested if experiencing COVID-19 symptoms and stay up to date with COVID-19 vaccinations. Residents should also know that every home in the U.S. is eligible to order a free COVID-19 at-home test. We have more information provided on our homepage. In Center County, there are 31,026 confirmed COVID-19 cases in total and 341 deaths. There are 86,551 reported negative cases in Pennsylvania, according to the Pennsylvania COVID-19 dashboard. And across Commonwealth, the number of confirmed positive cases have reached 2,297,484 and 484,000, with 43,909 deaths. Second, on vaccinations, Center County data shows that 94,460 residents have been fully vaccinated, and we have another 14,139 that have been partially covered with vaccination. The county's vaccination rate is approximately 60.5% having been fully 60% having been fully vaccinated and 69.5. Excuse me, my numbers are wrong there. The county's vaccination rate is approximately 69.5% being fully vaccinated. Next, as of today, March 15th, Mount Nittany Medical Center had a relatively low number. We had 3 COVID positive inpatients in care ranging from ages 58 to 89, and 2 of the patients hospitalized with COVID-19 at Mount Nittany were unvaccinated. With that concludes this report, and I'm happy to answer any questions from the board or the public. Again, thank you all for your continued patience.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Centrise? Looks like none. All right, with that, we will move on to our next special report of the evening, which I believe the chief is here in order to introduce 2 new officers to the department. Welcome, Chief Albright, and I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm very pleased to introduce 2 new Ferguson Township police officers to the board and to the community. Hiring a police officer is a rigorous process. It entails written tests, interviews, comprehensive background investigations, physical exams, fitness exams, psychologicals, and drug tests. And we want the best candidates to be, servants of the community. And fortunately tonight, 2 of those individuals are with us. This is a unique situation because the 2 officers are brother and sister. So first, I'd like to introduce Brian Greene. Brian, give a little wave. All right. Brian is a graduate of Bald Eagle Area School District. He obtained a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from Lock Haven University, and he honorably served in the Air National Guard. Prior to joining the departments, Brian was a police officer with Lock Haven City Police Department. Second, I'd like to introduce Sharice Greene. Sharice, give a little wave there. Nice. Sharice is also a graduate of the Bald Eagle Area School District. She earned a Bachelor's of Science in Social Services from Lock Haven University. She has worked several social services jobs, including a mental health caseworker with Center County. Both Brian and Sharice are already certified through the Police Academy and will soon begin their 14-week field training program that entails them to be teamed up with a veteran officer that will help them learn the job. Outside of that, Brian, Sharice, I welcome you to the township and the police department. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chief, and welcome both of you. Thank you so much for being willing to serve our community, and best of luck as you begin your period of, I'm sorry, Chief, what did you call that? Their upcoming period
Field training
of,
experience.
Okay. I thought there was a specific name you gave that certain day. Best of luck in your journey. And I would say welcome to the area, but no need to do that. So thank you for being here tonight with us.
Thank you.
All right. I guess we will now go ahead and move on. I do believe we have just a few words from Supervisor Stevens as an update on the Emergency Management Services Legislative Breakfast.
Thank you. I will be brief. Just to let you all know, and Tiara, you were there, so you can jump in if I miss anything. But it's what we learned at that breakfast is that the emergency medical service, I get confused with all the acronyms. So the EMS, referring to the ambulance service here in Center County, is in crisis. And it's a funding issue. It's also personnel. It's something that we are going to be addressing at public safety. I confess, not being a Center County native, that I sort of thought whenever I wrote a check to Alpha Fire Company that included ambulance service, but that is not the case. They really are distinct. Their funding sources are distinct. Their certification is distinct. So anyway, it's in crisis. It's something that we're going to be looking at in public safety. And I think anytime we can discuss maybe some funds or anything like that to support Center Lifelink, that would be well received. Again, Tiara, if you have anything to add, that you picked up on anything that I missed, that's all I have to report.
Just the fact that I think that educating the community more, because as you said, we didn't really understand or know that there's a difference between the paramedics, the EMS, and the QRS, which is the quick response system. And these people have different trainings and they're funded differently. And we, as in Center County State College, are lucky to have the Center County, is it Lifelink, Link Life? We're lucky to have that because other areas don't have that. And so just kind of understanding that, like Patty said, when she writes a check to the fire company, it doesn't include them. And again, there's different levels of training that they go through and different way that they're funded. So I think just kind of understanding that and educating the public as well as ourselves. So that way, if there is something we need to do, we bring it up, we can put it on our consent agenda, but not really understanding what we need is kind of like confusing, I guess you could say, because it does seem like they're all wrapped in together, but that Center County Lifelink is separate from all of this. So just kind of understanding what our area needs, I think is important, but that's all.
Thank you both. And thank you for providing this verbal report here tonight. I guess I will just add that recently in our finance committee meeting at Cog, it was brought up, I can't remember how, that some of the individual municipalities, I'm thinking College and definitely Ferguson, as individuals had contributed funds, unsolicited funds to Center Lifelink in our budget. Well, last year, past couple years, I'm fuzzy on the exact details, but just briefly mentioning that, perhaps it's time for us to have that conversation at the regional level of a more coordinated support. And then I'll add the question, what higher ups were there that are going to work on the agenda items that are emergency personnel really cry out for help with? Are they responding to the call as the local level is? Are they bringing dollars from the top down? Thanks, Patty.
Yeah, sorry. Are you asking me in terms of legislators? Which
Yes.
higher up ones were there?
Yes.
Okay. So most of the COG public safety representatives were there from the local level, municipal level. Mark Higgins was there for a while from Center County. Carrie Benninghoff, Irving, and one other, and then Scott Conklin's representative was there as well. So the message was received at the state and county level. And yeah, I hope there's real coordination that will take place.
Great. Let's all as a group try to remember to continue to follow up with that.
And Laura,
in all the ways we can. I'm sorry, Tiara, yes.
I'm sorry, my bad. I just wanted to say one more thing. I do think it's important because of the way our township is, and we have a lot of people in rural areas. They did make a good scenario or point, and I don't know if you remember this, Patty, about a person who, if it takes 30 minutes for an ambulance to get to them and they're having a stroke, by the time this ambulance gets to them, they won't be able to have that service. So again, luckily we have this life link, but I don't know how many ambulances we have, I guess you could say. So if they're answering one call and there's somebody having a stroke on the other side of the township, how long that's going to take them to get all the way to Nittany. So I do think it's something we should possibly really look at and think about, because something like a stroke, a heart attack, or something that could actually be where you can get that help, but then you elapse a certain time where certain types of damages start to sink in. I think that's not okay. So I think that we should really consider that. I don't know if you remember that, Patty, but I just want to add that too.
Thank you. It's really a good point. We talk about service to the west end of the township, that rural end. So we'll talk about that again at budget time. But like I said, Patty, on public safety, just continue to connect us with that dialogue, and we'll continue to keep that conversation going. Thank you so much. And Lisa.
Can I just ask a quick question? I'm just curious if they mentioned about LifeLink membership numbers, if that was up or down this year, if they had any feedback on that, just out of curiosity.
No, LifeLink really didn't get too much. He didn't really speak so much about membership or anything like that. It was actually quite complicated understanding the EMS response, and whether it's a transport to the hospital or not, and just a response. But it basically, I think a lot of it has to do with reimbursement. They did talk a lot about the not being reimbursed at a proper level from Medicare, Medicaid kind of thing. Those are significantly skewed. But then there was also a whole lot of discussion around reimbursement from insurance companies, because insurance companies tend to reimburse the individual as opposed to the center LifeLink, and that's problematic because they're just not getting their fees. So the cost that is involved in maintaining and running EMS is not being paid back by insurance coverage or Medicare or things like that. But he didn't speak to membership numbers, so I don't know.
Because that'd be something easy to promote, if that was one angle they were looking at.
Right.
Thank you all. Good discussion, important topic to be continued. We have no other reports tonight. In the audio issue time period, neglected to announce that we had an executive session. So Centrise, I don't know if it matters actually if I announce it mid-meeting or if it needs to be at the beginning. Okay, great. I will announce that now. On March 8th, we had an executive session for matters of personnel. And now we shall move on to the Cog Committee Reports. Any questions? I have a few. Any questions? So we'll go one by one. Land Use and Community Infrastructure Committee. Lisa, did you have any highlights that you wanted to add?
Yeah, I'll just talk about a couple of things. The agenda goes into a lot of detail, so you can get most of the information from there. I'll just note the broadband survey and speed test are ongoing, and I shared information about a countywide meeting that is happening. The bike plan updates were approved. Bike month was approved. I did make a point during that discussion. There's a lot of focus on expansion of those bike routes and shared use paths, and I'd like the education on safety to go along with that, because we are seeing a lot of pedestrian, bike, and car conflict in the area. So I think that has to go hand in hand, and I haven't always seen that. UAJA, the Meeks Lane we discussed. The comprehensive plan noted in the agenda are some proposed revisions to that plan update process. And I was just going to note that the the main part of that is that CRPA is interested in just incorporating certain existing plans into that comprehensive plan. Those would include the long range transportation plan, the LRTP, and the bike plan. Typically in the past, those have been a bit reworked and included in the comprehensive plan. And what the suggestion was just to include them outright just as they stand. There are a few little concerns with that, but, it does help with consistency and non-duplication of efforts. So it's overall a good thing. We'll just have to watch, the long range transportation plan is based on a lot of PennDOT requirements. So we don't want to limit our planning focuses on, just what they require of us. So that's something we'll need to keep an eye on. And I think that was really it. Those are the only things I wanted to point out.
Thanks so much. And before we move on, any questions for Lisa? Okay, I'm seeing none. Finance Committee was next. There's nothing I want to highlight. The report is in your agenda. Does anyone have any questions? Thanks for the input on that matrix. I reported on yep. And you can find the whole matrix was an attachment to the finance agenda. Should be interested in looking at the spread of how the different municipalities looked at those items. Next up, Climate Action and Sustainability Committee. Anything that you'd care to highlight, Hillary?
Yeah, just a few things. I will be sending a written report probably within the next day or two. I've been in and out of town the last couple of days. I think the biggest thing that I'd like to point out is that we voted to endorse the application for Cog's Soul Smart designation. It's a DOE funded program that provides no cost technical assistance to communities looking to develop local solar markets. Since we are a region council of governments, the highest level of designation we can get is silver because only municipalities can receive gold. I would be interested to see if it's possible for staff to look into what would be needed for Ferguson Township to pursue a gold Soul Smart designation, for board and later public feedback to determine what next steps we would like to take. I think as a township, it's really worth discussing in terms of increasing our renewable energy resources. And then I think the other thing of note, is that we will be moving it through general forum. We are going to look to create another technical advisory group for the CAAP implementation. So folks, they're going to be looking for a really diverse field of candidates in terms of career expertise and things like that. So if you know of any folks who would be interested, please feel free to send those contacts along to Pam Adams. And that's it for me.
Thank you so much, Hillary. I was glad to see that technical advisory committee being formed at the regional level, because that's where it needs to be, because that's where we're going to focus our staffing finances. So that's really great to implement that plan. I do have two questions. I'm going to ask others. Do you have any questions of anything that Hillary reported on or more? Lisa, yes.
I was just curious about how the discussion on the trash collection time went.
Same.
Oh, sorry, you're muted.
After how many years of Zoom, you think you're better at this? So actually it went pretty smoothly. I think in terms of recognizing kind of the shift in temperature over the summer months, knowing that our climate is getting hotter, it's fairer for workers. And I believe Ms. Stilson was in favor of just implementing it year round, but we'll certainly be trying it through the summer.
Okay. It's really early. We had a lot of feedback on how early that noise starts.
And to your point, Ms. Strickland, about noise, there was discussion, and I'm so sorry, I forget the gentleman's name. He did look into whether or not noise ordinances would come into play, and because it's a public service, it won't.
I'm not sure if that's accurate in terms of how our ordinance is written. I think when this was discussed, the last time it was discussed, I thought our manager had said that hours would need to be revised. However, that's not that important because if we were on board for that, that would be a minor revision. My follow-up with that is I've got a fair amount of concern about this moving forward. Do you know, is it going to general forum? And if not, it's no big deal. We can follow up, sometimes it's very confusing of where the authority lies to approve things. So
Yeah, I do not believe it is, but I can double check and get back to you.
thank you so much. One item I'm not sure that was brought to the table at the discussion. I know that this is being discussed as a workers' health concern, which of course that makes a lot of sense. We have road workers though, that, are in outdoor conditions. We have landscapers, we have private company landscapers. All of these individuals are exposed to the elements. And I think that this very loud, disturbing service, there are other strategies that can be implemented that would not result in earlier hours that hadn't been discussed either time so far as I understand, when we were pursuing this as a thought that we might change our policy. And I wondered if anybody brought to the table that, at least in the last discussion, unless they've resolved it, which is my question, which I'm finally getting to, did they resolve this issue? There are a certain number of individuals that are disproportionately impacted by this because of the way the routes are. So it's not that the whole township or the whole region or Carla Stilson that just wants to do it year round, that, they would have their fair share of this early morning pickup. It's the same neighborhoods, the same individuals every week. So I think that the way that typically the township would approach something like that is that we would survey those individuals and see how they felt about that particular intrusion, because they're the ones that are bearing the impact. So it's sort of like a two-side thing. So did anybody mention how the routes are? Because this was the discussion last time. Could they realign the routes so there were different individuals impacted, kind of spread out the impact so we could accommodate for the request? Did that come up at all?
It did not.
Okay. All right. If we can try to pursue that a little, it's sort of a negotiation. It's a sort of like a labor negotiation. We all want to work together to do the right thing, but that disproportionate effect is something that hasn't been addressed. So that would be super.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Okay, with that, it's Parks Capital. I'm sorry, reports are going kind of slow tonight. We have a lot that we really wanted to catch up on, I guess. I did want to touch on a few things on the Parks Capital Committee cancellation. So this Thursday, the Park Authority is going to be approving the Whitehall Road Regional Park construction contracts. And they're going to also be discussing the project manager position. The reason I'm pointing this out is because there's a kind of a bridge between this position and understanding what the Parks Governance Committee does. So we've talked a little bit about that and just continuing to help the region understand the nature of that ad hoc committee and what we're working on. You can see the project manager position. It will represent the authority and the agency. So it's kind of got a dual reporting, but when we talk about that project manager, really the authority is the only entity of COG really that's going to, I think, be interacting with them. So it'll be interesting as we see this process play out now that we're doing this Parks Governance Committee, kind of having this real world example and being able to work out some of those governance issues as we work through these two big projects that they're going to be working on. And then the other big item is the review of the CIP. So as I previously mentioned, this is another interesting, authority COG agency collaboration that in the past, been seen sort of as a cog only function, even though the authority is really responsible for those projects that are in the CIP. So this is the first year that, as far as I am understanding, in the history of these agencies, that there's going to be a group discussion in May about the CIP. And so we can kind of begin to build that new pattern of working together and coordinating on that really important document that guides both of our agencies. So sort of just important, deep structural work. Any questions on either finance or Parks Capital? I know there's, with the CIP, there may be some questions related to that process and where the authority fits in, capital committee and whatnot. Any questions? No questions. All right, then I will move on to other committee reports. We have none. Staff reports. Ms. Martin, would you care to point anything out in your manager's report?
I don't have anything to point out in the interim manager's report. I will share with you an upcoming communication is that we are tentatively confirmed for our ABC picnic event for June 2nd. So more information to come, but I did want to share with you, the Human Resource Administrator provided that update this afternoon, and I wanted to forward that to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Great news. Any questions for Centrise? And we'll ask for any other staff questions during this time. Okay, Lisa.
No questions, just another thank you for continuing to work on the Radio Park School, Cherry Lane school zone and working with the school district on that. It's so very appreciated. And I know that's extra meetings and more work. And but it's, you guys know we had a lot of citizen input, and it's a really important project. So I just really appreciate the effort and the updates.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I do too. Thank you for mentioning that. I did want to ask a question. Has there been any interest in that job description, in that crossing guard job there? We're still also pursuing that. Has there been any interest?
Well, first, I just want to share that most of the extra work has really been Dave Modricker in terms of communications with the school district. So thank you. My updates, while they're in the memo, they really do come from Dave Modricker. I will share with you that we did have an inquiry and we did have someone ask for the application. And it was my understanding that they had submitted the application. But after reporting on that, I was told that they did not respond with a completed application. So we have had one inquiry, which is more than we had in the past. But as of now, no, we don't have an application. But we continue to promote it, and hopefully we'll have something soon.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Dave Modricker. Okay. No other staff questions. We'll move on to unfinished business. First up, a public hearing on an ordinance of the Township of Ferguson, Center County, Pennsylvania, amending Chapter 16, Parks and Recreation, Part 1, Section 106 and 107, Chapter 22, Subdivision and Land Development, and Chapter 27, Zoning, by amending sections as described in the attached exhibits. This will be presented by Ms. Jenna Wargo, Director of Planning and Zoning. Hi, Jenna. Welcome and thank you.
Hello, thank you. So in November 2019, Township completed its comprehensive update to the zoning and subdivision land development ordinances. Since that comprehensive update, staff has been tracking errors and omissions while interpreting the ordinances, and we're recommending additional amendments to address those issues. Provided in the agenda are the draft amendments to each chapter as provided and reviewed by all local, regional, and county reviewers, as well as the redlined version. Staff's recommendation is that the Board of Supervisors adopt the ordinances.
Thank you, Jenna. This is a public hearing, so is there anyone in the public that would care to comment on this item? I'm seeing none, so I'll close the public hearing and I would entertain a motion.
This is Patty. I move that the Board of Supervisors adopt the ordinance amending Chapter 16, Parks and Recreation, Part 1, Section 106, 107, Chapter 22, Subdivision and Land Development, and Chapter 27, Zoning, by amending the section as described in the attached exhibits.
This is Hillary. I second.
Thank you both. All right, let's move to discussion. Is there any discussion? Any comments? If not, I apologize. I do have two. Okay, so my two comments. My first is a detail, and then my second is a general comment. First, thank you, Jenna, for all the work that you've done. Thank you, Centrise. Thank you, everybody that's collaborated and coordinated and talked about this. I know there's a lot of effort put behind this, so let me thank you for bringing that to a closure here. My detail question, it is the same as the question I had the last time, and I apologize, but typically, you know, if I don't understand something, I'm not seeing how something is making sense. By about the third time, Jenna explains it to me with immense patience. I see it, I understand it, and I agree, and I see it from that perspective. On this one, I just cannot see, and I'm not going to hold up the ordinance. This is leading to my second more general comment. I just can't see how the change that we're making in the Chapter 16, 16-1071C, issuing permits, same thing I mentioned last time, accommodates for what we changed in the actual code part about how we're allowing food trucks in parks. Because I'm just going to read the redlined copy, how I understand it. And Jenna, if you could just show me what I'm missing, if there is something, or we can put a pin in it and say, maybe it needs a little change next time. Okay, so we've said, if I understand correctly, our zoning administrator issues the permit to allow the food truck in our park. Is that correct?
We will be issuing a zoning permit for food trucks and parks, correct?
Okay. And you had mentioned last time it was a streamlined process, which meant, as I understood it, since the zoning administrator was issuing the permit, Center Region Park and Rec, we were going to accommodate for that clearance thing, but it didn't need to get another, they didn't need to get another permit, right? It was streamlined. It was one permit with that clearance through the zoning administrator. So when I read, is that understanding basically correct?
Looking at the current draft, what we removed was that background check requirement that CRPR requires to operate in parks. So when we discussed on a staff level with Parks and Rec and how to get this to work for both parties that are involved, is that the first leg of it is they will be coming to us and planning and zoning at Ferguson Township. We require all the same information as Parks and Rec. The only additional thing is that background check aspect. Once we get that permit to them, we will be essentially shipping that whole package over to Parks and Rec, so they know that this is approved by zoning. They have a permit to do this, and they have a list of their background checks, the active ones that they have. And it's just confirming that process. And it's really going to be ironed out more in the resolution once we get this ordinance adopted.
Okay, but when that's shipped over to Park and Rec, that's just informational. They don't then have another permit process. Is that?
They may have a permit process in addition to our zoning permit. And that's really going to be worked out in that resolution with staff to figure out, if we're already doing all these checks for you, we're providing all this information to you, can we just ensure that there are background checks in place for all of these food trucks. So ideally, I'm hoping that we can set up a system so we are sharing information. So we have an active list of every food truck in the municipality that has their background checks in place for CRPR, and try to make it as simple as we can if we have that information. And if we don't, then it's going to be working with Parks and Rec to ensure that it is a smooth and easy process.
Okay, so here's my trouble. So operationally speaking, the problem that we were trying to fix was that we heard feedback from residents that they wanted to have food trucks in parks for events and whatnot, and they were not being given permits by the permitting agency at said time. So we embarked on this journey so we could clarify that that authority is our authority, that when we say they can be there, they can be there. Nobody else has to say they can be there, because if that somebody else has to say that, we've then just added a layer of problem instead of resolving a problem. So in this item, this is what I've said the whole time, that to issue permits, item C, under uniform conditions to be prescribed by the director, meaning the director of CRPR. So if what we're saying is that now food trucks have to go through this whole process, and now they have to get a permit where they're going to be denied, if we are looking at historical trends of why they were being denied, which had nothing to do with our code prohibiting them, nothing, then we've just now not solved the problem. So that is going to be my comment. We don't need to get any further into it, but that problem has not been solved yet. And I hope that the way the code is written allows us to solve it in the resolution. So, okay, Tiara, I see your hand is up. Do you have a comment on that item?
Yeah, I actually have to agree with Laura. I actually have gotten confused now. I thought I understood it, but now I'm confused, because I guess I'm trying to figure out what's the difference other than the background check. What's the difference between them checking with Parks and Rec and then coming to check with us, if you're saying that they could possibly still be going through an additional vetting process? I don't understand the additional vetting process. If we're trying to step in to prevent that vetting process, then I'd have to agree with Laura. The problem isn't solved. It's actually, we just have added an additional layer. So what is the biggest difference?
Currently, right now, this is the same process. They start at the township, then they go over to Parks and Rec for their approvals. What we've added in B is not to adversely limit allowances as provided in the Code of Ordinances. So while Parks and Rec reserves the right to restrict uses that may go on in that park, it's not to adversely impact the allowances that we permit. So the scenario which is changing is typically when someone goes to CRPR to operate a food truck in a park, they say no, unless it's a private event sponsored by another group or entity. Now they cannot not say, you can't operate in this park. We are permitting a food truck to operate in parks. You need to issue whatever permit you have on your end of things and permit this food truck to operate in there. I don't know the background of what CRPR, I don't know if they can actually issue permits, if they have access to munis to do that. My goal with this is to work directly with Pam and figure out all of the background checks for the food trucks that have operated in any of the parks. Where's that list, and make it a simple process. So if it is in the instance of Pam provides us that list for the food trucks that have background checks, and we say, okay, so if any of these food trucks come to us, we issue a permit, they've done the background check, and we've already required the same information, we're going to issue the zoning permit to permit that. And the issue that we really ran into with Parks and Rec was just the idea that they didn't have the staff capacity to do those additional rounds in the parks for additional potential trash. And again, we don't know the result of this. And that's why my preferred method is to start small, to permit it in a couple parks, just to see the impact, and then eventually open up to bigger. But the chapter 16, and we saw this in Terrace Streetscape, you can't, it's very difficult just to make one change without it connecting to another part. And I think to make this a better process, we need to look at that chapter holistically.
So I'm going to just quickly comment, Patty, before I go to you. So here's the issue, is that when we started this conversation, the board was extraordinarily clear that we wanted the authority to allow a food truck to operate in a park, no strings attached, period, end of story. The issue that I understand with the permitting process for CRPR is not only it was prohibitive, but in addition to that, it was prohibited financially because they require a percentage of the profits of the food trucks. This was discussed, yes. In order to allow a food truck to operate, they place all kinds in the park. They place all kinds of conditions on the kind of money that they're going to be receiving from that in the permit, as I understand it.
That
is
was
my
not discussed in
understanding.
our meeting. Okay.
This may be the contracts. Anytime a food truck is working with CRPR to provide food in the trucks, in the parks, my understanding is that they get a percentage of the profits, and that's part of what was prohibitive. So if that is going to be just the same, we can pass this tonight because here we are now, but we really, I was thinking we were going to wait for this comprehensive rewrite of chapter 16 until the Parks Governance Committee did its work. But if we are just now creating another layer of regulation and not solving a problem, I'm going to immediately want to address that. And then that'll just, Patty, I'll go to you and we'll finish up this topic and then I'll segue into my general comment. Patty.
Thank you. I don't know if Laura, you or Jenna, if you can answer the question for me, but so the background check, is it that one that is done for free by the state police and then it's valid for 3 years? Is that the background check that they're requiring?
It is to, I'm going back to this email from Pam. It is to meet the child safety policy that they have for Parks and Rec. If I remember correctly, the total cost for the background checks were roughly $70 for all three. So that's child abuse clearance, Pennsylvania State Police criminal record check, and the FBI criminal record check.
Oh, that's okay. That's pretty hefty. Okay. And how long would it be valid for then? Is that?
That is not on Parks and Rec's website.
So I think that the board was aligned around, okay, if all members of the public have to comply with this child safety thing, that's a cost that to do business in the parks, you have to incur. Okay, fine. But it's the additional cost, the additional permitting. I mean, we've just literally made big government and not streamlined and added costs. And it's was not our intent setting out. So I will still vote for this gladly because there was a lot of other good work done for sure. But I'd like us to get it right back on the table, this particular passage, and really just talk about it for a few minutes and work this item out, if we could. Tiara.
You can correct me if I'm wrong, Jenna, because for me, the biggest confusion I have is I didn't know that once they filled out our application that they might, or there's a possibility they could still get turned down. I guess that's where my confusion comes in at. I'm not going to do anything to stop the process right now, but I am confused because I don't remember that. And maybe I wasn't listening clearly enough or misheard it, but I didn't understand that until just tonight. So I don't know if that was said prior to and I just missed it. And if I did, that's okay. But I just want to say that that's my only thing, is not understanding that if they go through us, they could still possibly be denied. That's the part where I just want to put that out there. But I'm not going to stop anything.
That's
Yeah.
also where my confusion lied, Tiara, that they have to get some other like authority ticket, yes, you may, permission, and that it'll come with a cost, and that cost is not set by us, and it could maybe involve their profits if it's the same kind of way that it's been done in the past. So could we have staff follow up and get those answers so we know how we want to prioritize looking at this particular subset of this? Thank you so much. And then that just leads into my general, I just want to keep bringing history forward, is when we, both times that we looked at the zoning code, the big rewrite time and then the pain points time, we talked about, and it was really not, it was not grounded in reality, I guess, in terms of workload. But we talked about the importance of greening our code, looking at cluster zoning, looking at incentives of various green and accessibility kinds of policy agendas. And we weren't able to do that. So I just wanted to say, as a general comment, it looks like it's kind of maybe already in the pipeline to do maybe that more detailed work. And it can we sort of, I don't know what kind of workload that involves. Can we get a handle on that now that we're ending the second process that we weren't kind of like yet able to get a handle on what a project like that would entail for staff to really complete something and not just talk about it. And not you guys, just us, we have to provide the funding and the resources for that to happen. It's just like something that keeps coming up and not making it over the finish line. Lisa, and then I'm done commenting. Thank you, Lisa.
Just a very quick comment on that. It's something we've talked about, like you said, throughout this whole process and the initial process too. And it was something I was thinking about and looking at the strategic plan item and how that is kind of mentioned in there. And I think that's a great place to address that and the universal access. So, I am with you, and I think that's a really good thing to bring up in addressing in the strategic plan discussion.
Thank you so much. Absolutely. And that's a great segue. If no one else has any comments, I think we are probably ready for our roll call vote.
I'm unmuted. All right. All right. So this is a roll call ordinance 2022-6. Ms. Deneni?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Ms. Strickland?
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And motion passes unanimously. And again, a big thank you to staff, Jenna and Planning and Zoning for working on this. It was a big project. Sorry for that little roughness here at the end, but we know that kind of runs deeper structurally than just on at our code level. So we understand why that happened. So we'll go ahead and move on to our review and discussion on the draft 2022 strategic plan update. This will be introduced by Interim Manager Centrise Martin. Centrise.
Thank
and welcome,
you.
Peter. Hi.
Hello.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And yes, welcome, Mr. Peter Milan. So in attendance is Mr. Milan, and he is here to present the draft of the 2022 Ferguson Township Strategic Plan Update, which is provided within the agenda packet. Mr. Milan, I will just hand it over to you unless if there are any questions as of now for me. If not, thank you. Mr. Milan?
Thank you so much, Centrise, and thank you for the opportunity to present this evening. Based on our last conversation, both Stephen Arowski and I went through a massive revision of the plan. And the version that we sent over, I think it was 2 weeks ago, or maybe last week, was pretty much our last and final product to submit for your review. I did speak to Centrise about it. We added some appendices to the plan, which I felt were critical. And I'm pretty much going to leave it up to you, to the supervisors, to kind of ask me questions if you like. I mean, it's a pretty lengthy document. I think we hit just under 70 pages with the appendices. So it's a pretty lengthy document. So I'll kind of open up the floor if that's okay with the Board of Supervisors for any questions, concerns, or commentary.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Peter. Yeah, with that, I'll go ahead and open it up to board members for any comment. And thank you so much for providing that draft well in advance and the work that you've done, Peter.
Thank you so much.
Any thoughts or comments? All right.
All right, cool. Have a good night then.
Yeah, all right. Good night. Bye, everybody. Yeah, I just have a couple. If no one else has any comments, we do. Okay, Tira, I see your hands up.
Yes, I wanted to talk about the promotion of a municipal identity. I like this. I like the way that this is worded, and but for some reason, I feel like I don't know. I don't know what cherish our diversity means. I just feel like it's kind of weirdly written in that aspect. But I do think diversity is part of the municipal identity. But I don't know. It just seems, that statement just seems a little weird, if that makes sense. Other than that, I don't really have any things, I see that diversity is throughout. And so I do appreciate that. So I just wanted to put that out there. Yeah.
Could you direct me to the exact location, please, so I can review it?
Yes, it is. Oh no, wait, I just scrolled off.
Yeah, you can really see how large it is when you're scrolling through all of it.
Yes, exactly. I'm like, okay, hold on. As soon as it was really.
I believe it's page 39. If that's helpful.
Okay. Yeah, you might be helping me. Yes. I literally just rolled real fast. Okay.
Can I take a moment, or actually, you know what? What I'll do is, if it's.
And I'll find it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if it's okay to the pleasure of the board, I think I'm going to take some notes, if that's okay, and I'll respond back to you individually, if that's okay. Madam Chair.
Oh, let's kind of see how the conversation goes. I don't know if we'll be able to bring that back into meeting then, or if it would go to the subcommittee. As far as just the responding individually, we might end up having the answer right here, right now.
Okay.
But while Tiara is looking for the weirdness, I know it always disappears when you're trying to present it in meeting. Trust me, it's happened to me many times. Yes, I do have one comment, Peter. There was I don't know if I missed it, but just the numbers for the survey totals now that it's closed. So I think really called frequency counts, number of total respondents. I don't recall seeing that kind of synopsis paragraph of, I guess I'd call it, the not the demographics, but the overall general overview of how many, who are they, kind of thing. That'd be great.
No problem.
And then also I was wondering, just same about the numbers. I'm not a math person, but I was just really keyed in on the numbers of just number of participants in the different public meetings. I think you might have said it in the business. I'm not sure. I can't remember now, but I don't think it was in the discovery space write up. It's just a small detail, but it kind of helps one wrap their brain around what the event was like.
Easy enough.
Great. And thank you so much for including those appendices. I really liked some of the changes that you guys worked on. I still think I would like to have a little bit of time to integrate, in particular, some of the staff feedback that we now find in the appendix. I think I'd really love to be able to integrate some of that into our main document. But Peter, I want to also really honor the contract length. And I think with our transition that we're going through, we've kind of been taking a slow roll approach on some things. And I think giving us a little bit of time to form a subcommittee and think about what staff input we might want to include, and what some of the other board recommendations we might want to include in the body. But sorry, that was a bit of a rambling comment. Started out details, went to general. But those were some of my thoughts about when Centrise and I talked about this agenda narrative.
Madam Chair, if you don't mind. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Centrise. I apologize. You can go.
That's okay. So we actually had, one or two other staff members that had some additional feedback that they wanted to be able to provide. And so a continuation of being able to still have additional staff member input would be really helpful. One suggestion that, I think that is on the table for the board's consideration is perhaps, we could do another meeting, understanding that this is a lengthy discussion generally every time we have it here on a Board of Supervisors regular meeting. The other option is really maybe just to form a subcommittee and allow a continuation of reading through the appendices and determine, what, if any, of the feedback that was received from the public, the staff, as well as individual board member feedback, we want to actually bring in and integrate into either the goals or the proposed objectives or as well as the action steps. So kind of having that flexibility, I think, would be really helpful for the board for, at least one, maybe even two more reviews of the draft document. I will share with the board, I did have a very, very brief discussion with Peter on Monday of this, or Friday or Monday. And he did share that he would continue to provide support for the board without any additional fees. And so we do appreciate that, Mr. Peter. That's very helpful. I do think, though, however, understanding that we have staff members that were on vacation prior to the work session and we were unable to get that feedback, having that flexibility might allow for the board to kind of take their time. And we are in the midst of a transition. And so, that's what I'll leave here with the board for further consideration is if you would like to form a subcommittee, I'm happy to organize those meetings for further discussion and review of not just additional staff member input, but also information provided in the appendix.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Centrise, and thank you, Peter. That was very generous of you to offer that. And I think combined with this strategy of a subcommittee that this timing and effort should work out. I'm sorry, I have an aggressively affectionate cat and she won't stop. So I apologize for this. She's going to keep at it. Thank you, Peter. So with that, should we maybe shift the discussion then to the subcommittee and save ourselves some time in our meeting? I'm all for it. And we can also have more than one subcommittee. The main thing is that we can't meet with a quorum. So a board subcommittee, also we want to respect staff time. So, how we arrange that. So I guess, yes, Lisa.
I love that subcommittee idea. I think it's, I'd love to spend some time with this document right now. I'd be happy to work in the subcommittee. And then if we needed to bring it back to the work session, we can do that. I'd love to see just some like you said, just spending some time with it, knowing we're in this transition, looking at maybe, some of what I was reading it, I thought, well, what I heard from the board and residents, maybe this priority needs to be moved up a little bit, or, these action steps need to be just reordered a little bit to reflect what we were hearing, maybe highlight some consistent themes throughout. And so I think it's a great idea. I think it would save us time in this kind of setting where it's very difficult to navigate the entire document. And, if we could be in the room in person and doing this, I think, a few of us here and there, I think would be really efficient and would get us where we want to be. And I'm not in a rush to finalize this. I don't think any of us are. I don't think we need to be. We need to get it right.
Thank you. And Hillary.
Yeah, to echo Lisa, I really love the idea of a subcommittee. I think there's so much fantastic work in here to really mine and see what else we can promote and develop if needed. Especially in consideration of the appendices that were just added. And so, yeah, I think, and yeah, I mean, of course, making things a little bit more streamlined in these meetings is always a bonus. So it sounds like, and I don't know if this is just discussion or if this is a vote, but like if we want to form a subcommittee and then come up with kind of like a projected calendar in terms of when these future discussions are going to happen, I'm all for it.
Great. And yes, there is a recommended motion that we can vote on that includes forming the subcommittee. So at this time, I would entertain that motion.
This is Lisa. I'll move that the Board of Supervisors accept the draft strategic plan update and form a subcommittee to review and comment for a final update to be reviewed by the board at the next work session prior to adoption.
I'll second that. It's Hillary.
Thank you both. And then just to clarify in that motion, Centuries, can we read that at the next work session, which is prior to adoption, that doesn't necessarily mean the exact next work session? Okay, that's what I thought too. Okay, fantastic. Because then that allows us, in case we want to jump a work session if we feel we're not ready once we get that timeline together. Okay, great. So we've got a motion and a second. Do we want to work out quickly one or two subcommittees, rotating subcommittees quickly here while we're all together before we vote? Just anyone, let's start with this. Total number of supervisors that would be interested in serving on a subcommittee to look at some portion of this strategic plan. So if you have an interest, you can raise your electronic or your normal hand. Well, it looks like we've got two subcommittees because we had 4 people. So that's great. So I think we can do the organization of that via email.
Yes.
Now that we have, okay, fantastic.
I'll follow up in an email. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, is there anything else before we vote on this item? Okay, one final thanks to Peter for this evening. Thank you much. And let's take our voice vote on this. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. All right, that motion passes unanimously. Thank you all. And we're moving on to new business. First up is the consent agenda. I'm going to pull something off of this. I'm going to pull item B, special event request, Central Cycling Classic special event application off the consent agenda. Does anyone else want to pull anything else off the consent agenda? Okay. Seeing none, I'll accept a motion to approve the consent agenda item A and C.
This is Patty. I move that we approve the consent agenda items A and C.
Thank you so much. Do I have a second?
Our seconds here.
Thank you.
We've been
TR
fighting
got
for
it.
seconds all night. That's okay.
All right. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously, and we will add the special event request to the end of new business. And if everyone would help me remember that, sometimes I'm bad about remembering these kinds of things on the agenda. All right, so next up, we've got a request for modification or waiver. This will be introduced by Planning and Zoning Director Jenna Wargo. And we have the Rogan 264 Sycamore Drive Land Development Plan 22-401.1.c.1G Lighting and Landscaping Plan. Jenna.
Thank you. Pantera Engineering, on behalf of their client, has requested a waiver from 22-401.1C.1G Lighting and Landscaping Plan. This section of the ordinance requires the applicant to provide a lighting plan sheet and a landscaping plan sheet and comply with those ordinances, so our lighting ordinance as well as our buffer planting ordinances. Since this land development plan is proposed in a single family home and included in the draft subdivision land development ordinance amendments, these requirements are proposed and now adopted to be exempt for single family homes. Staff is not recommending any conditions to be included with the request. Planning Commission reviewed this application at the February 14th meeting and recommended approval of the waiver from 22-401.1C.1G Lighting and Landscaping Plan. I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Thanks, Jenna. I'm going to have a question on this one. I'll log my question prior to entertaining a motion. So I think I heard you just say this is going to be not a requirement here in the future now that we've passed. Okay. Okay. So even for sloped properties like this.
So for our ordinance, if they are proposing any development on a slope or steep slope as defined by our ordinance, they then have to submit a stormwater plan and E&S controls for their development that they are proposing. And they are required to meet those ordinances with steep slopes.
So even in the single family home, which normally doesn't have an LDP, when in this case, so in this steep slope area, we're going to be seeing some sort of plan that acknowledges steep slope, landscaping, roots help hold that in place, and there's some integrated knowledge there. Okay, great.
For the most part, it's really the buffer planting requirements of 15 feet all around the property. And then enforcing that at a staff level, we would be going out to more houses to do that.
Gotcha. Okay, no problem. That's great. I'm so glad we have that steep slope thing there going on. That's good. That's what I wanted to know. Any other questions before I entertain a motion? Okay, with that, you'll find a motion in your agenda. I'll entertain it now.
This is Patty. I move that the Board of Supervisors grant the waiver from 22-401.1.C.1G Lighting and Landscaping Plan.
Now nobody is going to second.
I was waiting for Lisa. I thought Lisa was going to get this one. This is Tiara. I was like, I took Lisa's last time. I thought she was going to do it this time. Okay. This is
You
Tiara.
two are in sync tonight. Rock, paper, scissors. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Fantastic. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously, and we're on to the Rogan 264 Sycamore Drive Preliminary Final Land Development Plan, also presented by Jenna Wargo.
Thank you. On December 13th, 2021, Pantera Engineering submitted on behalf of their client the Rogan 264 Sycamore Drive Preliminary/Final Land Development Plan. The application is proposing to construct a single-family home on the 7.5 acre lot. The residential home is required to submit land development plan because it is proposed in an area identified as having steep slopes. The parcel is located within the single-family R1 zoning district. On October 4th, 2021, the applicant was granted a modification from 22-301 general to permit this plan to proceed as a preliminary/final land development plan. So what that means for the new board members is typically you would review land development plans twice, at the preliminary and final. With smaller plans, they go through just one time, preliminary/final process. This will be the first and last time that you would look at this plan. Ferguson Township Planning Commission reviewed this plan at the February 28th meeting and recommended approval.
Thank you, Jenna. And there is a recommended motion in your agenda that I would entertain at this time.
This is Hillary. I recommend that the Board of Supervisors conditionally approve the Rogan 264 Sycamore Drive Land Development Plan, subject to the conditions described in the Planning Director's Memorandum dated March 8th, 2022.
This is Lisa. I'll second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously, and we're on to the zoning appeal request for variance, also presented by Jenna Wargo.
This will be the last time you see me tonight, I promise. Centrise put me all up so we could just rip it off like a Band-Aid. So provided with the agenda is a copy of an application submitted by Charles Allen for a property located at 901 T Berry Lane. The applicant is requesting a variance from 27701 3C1 floodplain conservation to replace in kind an existing patio and stairs. The zoning ordinance prohibits all new construction or development, including substantial improvements in the floodplain. So staff's recommendations that the Board of Supervisors remain neutral on the variance request.
Thank you, Jenna. Also, I'll just add, bringing the history to the present. It is pretty typical that the board opposes variances that encroach into the floodplain. It does appear that there's not going to be any additional encroachment, but I did notice a different size from concrete patio to paver. So my question is, which I think I know the answer already, is we consider those pavers as permeable then, correct? They are not included in impermeable? Because if not, I would want to oppose this variance, and I'm sorry, because I want to be consistent, because it would entail then further encroachment. Because if I read it correctly, they're expanding size-wise. Goes from 10 by 12 to 10 by 24, I think. Dave Modricker, I think that might be a question for you as far as whether those pavers are considered permeable because the water comes through the cracks, or they're considered like a concrete slab.
Sure. I did not review the details of this particular application. If it is pavers that we think of that you and I might build at home, typically those are considered impervious, but they're pervious pavers. They do sell and manufacture and install pervious. So I did not review this, so I don't know the particulars to be able to answer it.
Thank you. It says specifically patio blocks. I don't know if that has a special definition that you know is either one or the other.
Well, typically patio blocks would be impervious.
Okay, so I'm going to oppose this. If we put the motion forward that we remain neutral, I'll vote no, because we typically, unless I'm misunderstanding this permit application, Jenna, the way I'm understanding it is right now they have a 10 by 12. They want to expand, but to 10 by 24, replace Cog, and they're both impervious. So they're expanding further into the floodplain. Is that incorrect because the expansion isn't into the floodplain, it's adjacent to it?
So that is included in their agenda, and what zoning hearing board will review is to permit the variance to replace in kind what is existing, and then that additional part of the request is to expand that patio, and that they may not grant that variance. So it's really up to the board. I think typically, as long as they can provide in the public meeting that there is no signs of the floodplain coming up onto their property. I think for this one, there is a retaining wall that prohibits those floodplains from coming up onto that area. It's really a mixed bag with zoning hearing board on how they address these. It's really just depends on what is provided in that public hearing.
Complicated.
So there's a retaining wall in the existing floodplain that modifies the floodplain, but we're not going to ask them to do a Lomar Clomar or whatever because it costs $30,000 generally. Okay. All right, Patty, you have your hand up.
I was just trying to find the application because I thought they did say it was pervious pavers, but I could be wrong. I'm trying to find it now and I can't. No, that's the Rogans.
It says replacing with patio blocks will provide drainage.
I thought somewhere I saw, I could be wrong.
Okay. I see this, yeah.
Yeah, I see patio blocks or replace the concrete patio.
Okay. I probably added that in my mind then.
Well, it says use patio blocks to increase drainage. So it seems like that's their intent. So I guess I'm feeling, given the combination of what Jenna has said and I guess the intent that I'm maybe reading into this application, I guess I could feel comfortable remaining neutral, but I really want to be careful to hold the line with that floodplain variance allowances. And so I don't know if in the future there's any additional information that we can be provided to help us understand the circumstances of the exact floodplain we're talking about in the future, like this retaining wall circumstance and whatnot.
Yeah, I can have the zoning officer provide us additional information for these types of requests.
That'd be great. That'd be great. Okay, I don't know whose hand went up first. And if Patty's, maybe I don't know, yours is going back down. Tiara, let's go to you and then we'll go to Dave Modricker.
Dave's was probably up first, but I'm kind of confused because I don't know if you're trying to confuse me, Laura, but
I'm sorry.
The motion says to remain neutral. So are you saying to vote no means you're not remaining neutral? I guess now I'm just confused.
Yeah.
I mean, if our job is to remain neutral, doesn't that mean that if we vote yes, we're just remaining neutral?
Yes.
It's making it sound like if we vote yes, we're not remaining neutral. And so now I'm confused on what's happening.
Yes. So I might have, depending on how this conversation went, I might have actually made a motion and tried to convince you all to oppose this variance. So, but I also said that it also might have been a circumstance where I said, okay, well, all right, others might want to remain neutral. They're going to make that motion. I might still want to vote no on that because I might want to take a position where I don't want to see that encroachment. So there were a couple of things happening there.
But that's what I'm saying. You're saying if you vote no, you don't want to see what's going to happen, which means that if we vote yes, we are going to see what's going to happen, which means we're not staying neutral, correct? See, that's why I'm confused right now.
Yeah.
Does anybody else here understand what I'm saying? I'm getting confused, so I need.
No, I think I understand what you mean. It's sort of like, it's almost like a double negative, but a different linguistic concept. So the motion is that, so eventually these folks are going to apply to the zoning hearing board for this variance. And that's the body that's actually going to either grant it or not. But we have this process where it comes to us first and we're like, what's our recommendation to the zoning hearing board, which really that we have no authority over them. So it's really just us having an opportunity to look at this. So when we remain neutral, it basically means like we have no opinion whatsoever. Like we don't care, positive, negative. We either oppose, support, or remain neutral. If we oppose it and we do it with a majority, we'll send a solicitor to that meeting to argue for our point of view, which happened in another variance that we did oppose that was a floodplain variance kind of recently. Can't remember if it was the board before this board, but anyway. So, and then we sent the solicitor so in this case, the recommended motion, and now I'm understanding staff recommended it likely because of this retaining wall, maybe the pavers are pervious. And that's why I'm asking for more information, because in the future, I want to be able to hold that line on that floodplain variance. Like, I don't want to grant it if it's going to have an effect. And I want to then say, I move that we oppose it, which I'm not moving that now, but I would if I did. And then I'd try to rally you guys to support that. And then we'd send our solicitor. But right now, we don't have a motion on the table. There's one recommended that's the neutral one. And through this conversation, I'll probably even support that. But also still with that recommendation in the future, so we can have more knowledge as to how to vote. Did that clear up? Mostly.
Yeah. Okay.
And Dave Modricker.
Just a note for the pervious pavement for Jenna or whoever's going to attend the zoning hearing board meeting. To be truly pervious pavers, they have to be designed and constructed that way. It's hard for a homeowner to just install patio blocks and hope that by chinking it with some open stone, they're going to serve as pervious pavement.
I believe this was provided to Ron Seibert as well.
Okay.
He should be looking at it.
Thanks. So when the zoning hearing board rules on it, they'll have that information then. Okay. And Lisa.
I'm leaning toward not being supportive of remaining neutral, as in I would want to oppose it due to the floodplain issue and wanting to be consistent with that. So I guess I'm looking for something from staff to maybe explain a little bit further your reasoning for the recommendation of remaining neutral. Is that the retaining wall? And if so, could you just explain how that is a function of, mitigating this encroachment, the risk? So yes, I'm looking for the reasoning behind the recommendation.
My limited knowledge of this application submission is the fact that that retaining wall is located on that property to prevent that rising floodplain waters from making it on its way to the property. From what I've seen in previous zoning hearing board meetings, is if there are those aspects of the property, retaining walls, if they can provide proof that the floodplain has never risen up to that area where they are proposing this type of development. So part of that hearing that will take place is the applicant providing that information to zoning hearing board, proving that the current setup of the property is already addressing those floodplain issues. So while it is located in that floodplain, that aspect of that retaining wall would be included. For staff wise, for us, I like to remain neutral in all of these cases, especially if it's in kind repairs for what's there. And the real question for zoning hearing board is if they are going to grant the variance for the additional footage that they are requesting. And I've seen many times that has never been granted.
Okay.
So to clarify, I think it's troublesome for us conceptually to have, I know it's just the way it is, too bad, tough for us, but for us to have that existing part tied with the expansion. If it were just the existing, of course, absolutely support it even. It's that expansion. So when you include that expansion that's impervious, then that's when we want to oppose it. So it's hard to figure out what to do in that case. Dave Modricker.
You can do both.
Can we not oppose that?
You
part
could,
and
yeah.
oppose-
You
Well,
could
then
oppose
that-
the expansion and remain positive of the replacing kind.
Well, if we can get that picky, can we support the existing and and oppose the other unless they use pervious pavers? We can't get like that, right? It's just a support or oppose.
It depends on who usually attends zoning hearing board meetings. So typically it would be Dave if it had anything to do with I'm trying to think of an example when Dave would show up versus a technical sort of review. So the last floodplain variance that the zoning hearing board heard was for Honda, that we sent the solicitor, myself, and Scott Brown to testify at that hearing. So it really just depends on technical aspect of the request. This is pretty minimal because it is just a residential home. So I'm happy to attend, or Centrise on behalf of the board, with that specific testimony to include in the hearing.
Even if we remain neutral, really?
Mm.
Or would you want it in the?
And it could be specified that you are not opposing the request for the in-kind replacement of the stairs and patio, and that if the expansion is impervious, then you would not be, you would be against that request.
That seems consistent with previous positions. What do folks think about that as a motion? Do we need a synopsis of that? Anyone? Lisa, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense. If it's just, like you said, if it was just the replacement and that's how I read it initially, you know, obviously it's not an issue. And if, you know, if staff's confident that that retaining wall makes this a different scenario than other floodplain encroachment that we normally oppose, then I'm fine with remaining neutral in the whole thing. I guess that's where I'm just, you know, I don't know, you know, I can't really see from the diagrams here, you know, it's just, it's difficult to tell just from this. So I guess I would be fine remaining neutral given what Jen has said about the retaining wall already being in place to address the issue.
Okay. Yep.
But
I'm
I'd
just
also-
wobbling all over the place with this, and we can wrap it up. I think we've explored it pretty thoroughly. Tiara.
Yeah, I was just going to say, even though I might still be a little slightly confused, I'm just going to go along with you all because the whole neutral thing is really what's confusing me, not so much as the other questions. So I'll just concede to whatever the board does. So that way, I hope anybody doesn't feel like they're still trying to explain it to me, but as you know, I'll concede and keep going. So.
Yeah, it's a little bit, it's actually a little bit of a confusing process. And as far as I understand, not other center region municipalities, I don't think they do this with this relationship with the zoning hearing board, is my understanding. But so it's our just our opportunity to say something from one body to another with a kind of a formal way, I guess, that can involve a solicitor. Okay, so I think we've all come to the point where we can be neutral, but clearly from the meandering on this conversation, in the future, when we have these floodplain variance requests, if there's anything other than let's just oppose it for obvious reasons, help us understand why we should remain neutral with the retaining walls and the engineering and whatnot factors. With that, I will entertain the motion found in your agenda.
I recommend the Board of Supervisors remain neutral on the variance request.
This is Patty. I'll second.
And thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. And motion passes unanimously. We are on to the award contract 2022-C6 curb and ramp upgrades. Dave Modricker will be presenting this.
Thank you. Bids were open publicly for contract 2022 C6 curb and ramp upgrades on March 8th. The bid was attended by a number of individuals. It was advertised in the Center Daily Times. The invitation was sent to 15 qualified contractors. We did receive 4 bids. Wolniak Construction, $125,597.50. Landserv Inc., $148,803.45. Galeno Hawbaker, $182,454.15. HRI Inc., $289,480.60. Attached to the packet is a copy of the bid tabulation. The engineer's estimate for the contract is $227,000 some dollars. Funds are budgeted for the work. I recommend the Board of Supervisors award the contract to Wolniak Construction, Inc. for a total of $125,597.50 in accordance with their bid.
Thank you, Dave. And you've summed up our motion very well there. Would anyone like to move that for us?
This is Patty. Move to accept the motion as read by Dave Modricker.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
This is Tiara. I second that motion.
Thank you. Any discussion on the matter? All right, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. The motion passes unanimously.
Can I just ask a side question, Laura? Like, I didn't want to ask it like within the motion, but just to know, like, just to ask Dave, is this like a normal number, or is this high or low compared to like what this is, like what this usually would cost? Is this high, low, or is this normal?
So the engineer's estimate is $227,000. So we did get 3 favorable bids below the engineer's estimate and 1 over the estimate. It's very typical for the engineer's estimate to be somewhere in the middle. So in this case, I would say that the bids were reasonable.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Sure.
Yes.
Great question. Great question. Okay, and let's move on to reject bid and cancel contract 2022-C4 pavement repairs, also introduced by Dave Modricker.
And there are occasions when we receive bids that aren't consistent with our engineer's estimate and maybe not very competitive. So bids were open publicly for contract 2022-C4 pavement repairs on March 1st. Again, a number of individuals in attendance. The bid was advertised in the Center Daily Times, and the invitation to bid was sent to 7 qualified contractors. Pavement repair, otherwise known as base repair, is done in advance of our microsurfacing projects. And in the past, it's been performed in-house. This is actually the first time that we've solicited this contract for bid. It is, the work is spread out, it's small quantities. We've received only 1 bid, Glen Baker, $97,139.30. Attached is a copy of the bid tabulation. The engineer's estimate for the work is $46,856. So while the bid was within budget, it was twice the engineer's estimate. I reviewed it with staff. I also went back and looked at our historical pricing because we did track our own internal pricing over a number of years for a number of different projects. And the bid that we received per unit of work is probably twice, what we've been able to do this for in the past. I also took a look at our work schedule, and we'll be able to perform this work in-house. So in this case, I'm recommending the Board of Supervisors reject the bids and cancel the contract.
Okay, great. Thank you for that thorough understanding. So there is a motion in your agenda, and I'll entertain it at this time.
This is Hillary. I move that the Board of Supervisors reject the bid for contract 2022-C4.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
This is Tiara. I'll second that motion.
Okay, any questions, further comments? All right, seeing none. Oh,
sorry.
No.
I think I just want to go on record as saying, like, I will probably have a really hard time voting yes for any potential contracts that we award to Glen Baker due to his persistent wage theft of his workers.
Yeah, let's all hear to that right there. Absolutely. Isn't PennDOT taking some sort of action to try to not let them bid on contracts? This is what I heard. Yep. And Yep.
I believe there was action taken. My current understanding is that they do hold pre-qualifications to bid. So one of our contract requirements in all of our bids that we put out on the street for large projects is that they're PennDOT pre-qualified, and they have to submit a pre-qualification number. So if in fact their pre-qualification is revoked, then they will not be an eligible bidder. If they do have their PennDOT pre-qualifications, then we'll still accept the bids, and then it'll come in front of you for a determination.
Yeah, thank you for that explanation.
But that is not the reason why you are recommending that we vote it down, correct, Dave? You have other.
In this case, you are correct. That's not the reason.
Yep.
I just want to make sure, because I think what Hillary said is a great reason not to, but I also want to make sure that that's not why you were.
Yep, absolutely. And I had a question. We aren't obligated to go with the lowest bidder, or we are? Or it depends.
We are obligated to go with the lowest responsible and responsive bidder. So there's two terms that are used, responsible and responsive. There's yardsticks that we've used in the past to determine if a contractor meets those two qualifications, and that is something that you might want to discuss further.
Likely sounds likely. Okay. All right. Great. Thank you. And I have forgotten if we already voted or not. Did we? Okay. All right. We do have a motion in a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Okay, great. And we are back to the consent agenda item that I pulled. So first, I want to be very clear. I strongly support this event. It's gone on for multiple years. It's a great organization. We have many, many, many great organizations in the region and the township that have wonderful events that we support. That being said, their event annually, they have been putting their signs in our right of way and attaching them to street signs. So each year I mention that it's really important that they follow our sign ordinance like all the other really awesome organizations that have events in our township and host, markets and barbecues like the Lions Club and car events like the VFW and many, many, many. So can we, looking at the application for special events permit, so I was trying to figure out what kind of communication tool can we use, right, for the folks that are applying for these permits. So we're really clear, no signs in the right of way, because events require signs. Number one thing you're going to do when you're planning an event, get some signs and put some signs around. So it might make sense. So I thought I'd take this opportunity to say it might make sense to revise this application for special event permits. And my question to you, Centrise, is would that be something that staff could just take care of? Or is that something that it would need to come before the board? And all I was thinking is, there are rules, whatever few rules you want to put about signage, none in the right of way, none attached to stop signs, none attached to street signs, none on busy, dangerous corners where our enforcement officer then has to go out 3 weeks later and remove all 50 of them. Whatever, can we add something there? And can that just be staff do that? Or do we need to talk more?
So I do believe we can make the change to the application, that minor change at a staff level. And if I'm wrong, I'm happy to go ahead and add it to the April 5th agenda for the board to discuss and review for a vote. But that minor tweak should be fine, and we should be able to do that at staff level. And
great.
Yeah.
Great. And no rush, right? Because each year we just have the same conversation, and I'm just wondering, what strategy can we use to end having that conversation and that staff time and stuff? Sign ordinance is always a good time. And then while we're revising this, I noticed registration for a food event on public property form that's signed by the Department of Health and Neighborhood Services. Is that
still a thing? And is that the Department of Health in the borough that we contract with? And you also don't have to answer that now if this is like a leftover from before, or if it's still active. I'm not sure.
Well, I will say the department, my initial thought is yes, I think it is contracted through the State College Borough, and the department or the neighborhood services team, I'm not sure is still a thing there, but I would have to check.
That was
Is
what
there
I
a
wondered.
specific- Okay.
Later, again, not a huge priority, but as we revise this, maybe a question to the borough, is that the right thing?
Right.
Is there still this form kind of,
Yeah, we'll update it.
Thank you,
If we're able to do it at staff level, we'll check. I'm sure David Pabolka's name's still on there as well somewhere. So
great.
We'll get it figured out. Thank you.
Thank you. And then final detail on this particular event. I see there's a contact person there. Can we make contact with that person? Just gentle reminder, the proper way to get your directional signage is to contact the property owner and to put it out of the right of way. If that's at all possible, that'd be great. And thank you so much. I'm ready to accept a motion to approve this permit application whenever anybody is ready to provide that.
This is Patty. I move that we approve the permit application for, Center Cycles for CVIM.
Both, yes. And do we have a second?
This is Lisa, I'll second.
Thank you. And any further discussion? All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you. And we are on, I believe, to communications to the board. I lost my place here. Yep, we are on to communications to the board. Any communications that folks would like to report on this evening? Sorry if your hand is up because I'm lost in my windows right now. Okay, any communications? No? Tiara.
I'd just like to invite the board in Ferguson Township. Just last Monday, Ezra Names, the mayor of the borough, announced March 20th as the Day of Unity. And so there will be various events happening in honor of Osaze Osage and the Day of Unity within the borough. And so I'm just inviting everyone to come out and check those out. That's it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation. Anyone else? I have a few. All right. Contacted about a dog feces issue on the only walking path in Pine Grove Mills. So yeah, it's apparently pretty prolific there and lots of people use it. So I think we're gonna look into maybe posting some signage, and that may need a budget, very, very small. And I think Century maybe was going to bring that to the board, or depending on the budget level, I'm not sure, maybe at the staff level, I'm not sure, but we may hear more about solving that problem. An interesting question came from a resident that previously asked me an interesting question. His previous interesting question was about the commercial recycling, that we found out really we have the worst compliance in the region in Ferguson Township. And yeah, we do. And that harkens back to what I was going to ask Hillary about the CAS agenda. Is they talked about that recycling rebate and where it's going to be used. And we really need recycling in parks, but why isn't that in the parks operational budget? I wonder. And can, that, what are all the ways that rebate money can be used? Can we incentivize this very impactful sector that we're doing, so poorly in? Anyway, so this time the gentleman asked, are there permit requirements for replacement windows in multi-family housing units? And so I asked the code director, and the answer is no, there are not. So there are no insulation rating requirements that need to be met.
There's no permit that needs, you have to have a permit to operate a food truck in a park, but you do not need a permit to replace every window in a multifamily apartment and then outsource the cost of heating to all of the residents. So that's confusing and leads me to then wanting to ask Stephen, who has worked on our strategic plan with us, who mentioned one time that there are opportunities in the state of Pennsylvania to further restrict the property maintenance and the building code. I had never heard those words before, and it shined like a beacon of light when he said it, because if so, it would be maybe things like this, that we could be more restrictive and meet our climate action goals that we're never going to meet when individual property owners are not even hitting low-hanging fruit like good windows. So long story short, the gentleman really inspired some thought about, how we could incentivize, if not mandate, these kinds of more energy efficient behaviors by landlords that would then have really positive trickle-down effects for their region, their residents in our region. Okay, so that wraps up that one. I had one stormwater fee complaint from a farmer that I promised myself I will follow up on, and I regret I have not yet. Simply that, they're voicing the same thing that many farmers have voiced, that they provide recharge and they shouldn't be charged the fee at all. So I'm going to follow up and talk a little bit about that with that gentleman. And then the last item I was contacted about was the so-called fill pile off of North Nixon that really is more like an industrial commercial dirt depository. And so I was contacted by a resident who lives nearby. It's a really kind of a nuisance activity. And they're very confused on that road, that they share that road with this person. They're very confused about why, when the township is so supportive of restrictive ag zoning that supports agriculture, and so supportive of funding agricultural preservation, that we would allow such a use in an ag zone. So point taken. And I did want to follow up with Jenna just to learn more about fill site. Where does that fall in our zoning code? And, is there anything that we can do to mitigate the effects of this on the neighbors? So that's it. I had a lot of outreach from residents. Anything else for the good of the order? If not, I think I'm at dates now. I've totally lost my agenda. I think I'm at dates. Okay, great. So we have our regular meetings that are upcoming. And if there's nothing else, it's, I believe, time to Patty. Yes, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just curious, why was the thing at Baileyville, why was that postponed?
Snow.
Oh, okay. Oh, right. It snowed that day. Brilliant. Okay.
Yep. We were all blissfully snowed in or frantically digging out one way or the other.
Has it been rescheduled?
Chief Albright just noted when we talked that it would be postponed. So I anticipate that there'll be a rescheduled date, but as of now, we have not been informed of that date.
Thanks. All right. If nothing else, it's time that I call for the motion to adjourn. Patty.
Motion to adjourn. This is Patty.
All right, great. Thank you all.
Good night.
All right, good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night.